You're listening to the audio portion of Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is a free live discussion about topics affecting accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. You can join the ABBO group in Facebook to participate live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Just search for ABBO in Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you will learn, grow, and build a thriving bookkeeping practice. We have hundreds of lessons with almost every aspect of the industry. Start your free month today at Schoolofbookkeeping.com.
All right. Well, welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. We are continuing our data conversion series here. So today we're actually going to be talking about round tripping with Mac. Now, yeah, like, well, I mean,
why would you do this trip thing?
Yeah, it involves no illegal substances, so it's not that kind of tripping. But a lot of people don't even realize that there is a QuickBooks version for Mac, right? So
yeah, you know why there still is, right?
I was about to do a little bit of history of the Mac version.
I'll be quiet.
Because when I started at Intuit, version 4 for Mac was out, 4.0. And it was in the midst of one of those things where, because the thing with Apple products, right? And I used to joke about Mac users, like you can always tell a Mac user, but you can't tell them much, right? Because they're very loyal.
And now we can't stand PCs. So.
Exactly. Because they're very loyal to their products, right? Like you can't tell a Mac user that a Windows PC is superior in any way, right? And that's part of the divisiveness of this country. Is people choose sides and then don't bother seeing the other side, right?
There's no middle anymore.
But let's not get into that discussion of left, right, Android or Apple or anything like that. The fact is that there is a Mac version of QuickBooks, and that is for people who own a Macintosh who want to install a version of QuickBooks in their Macintosh environment.
Mm-hmm.
And because Apple is Apple, there has been some development from the Intuit side of things when it comes to Mac, right? So there was a point in time where they needed to pay software companies in order to develop software for their computers, right? So when QuickBooks came out, and QuickBooks for PC or Windows was very popular, Apple approached Intuit and said, hey, can you please develop a product for Apple-based computers? And so they did, and they said, well, here's your subsidy, for that. Then Apple computers started to get more popular, and Apple, being Apple, said, there goes your subsidy.
A mirror camera problem.
Right.
Right.
So version 4.0 for Mac was the latest version for, unfortunately, like 6 years. And so if you ever look at QuickBooks for Mac, you'll see that it looks, there are some things that are based off of older technology, like the reconciliation screen, for example. It's still based off of QuickBooks 2001. Because when those subsidies kick back in, and that's what happened, is like 6-year gap in QuickBooks for Mac happens, and rather than scrap the whole QuickBooks all together, they just built on top of what was already there, and some of the things never got updated, right? But there are some things that are a little bit superior in Mac, because they're very because Mac is very user friendly, very intuitive. There was actually we had one client who went from QuickBooks for Mac to QuickBooks Enterprise, and there was a little sidebar that they loved in Mac, and that they were just, and it just didn't exist in Enterprise, of all things. And so every time we talked to them, it was like, yeah, what about this? Because that was like, that's the way he did most of his work, was from the little sidebar on the sales transactions, and it just didn't exist in Windows. So unless you're, as an accountant or bookkeeping professional, unless you have a Mac, there's really no need for you to have QuickBooks for Mac, right? Because your version of QuickBooks Accountant is a PC-based software, right?
Right.
And in order to view your client's data in QuickBooks for Mac, you would either need to have a Mac and just back up and restore the file, do whatever you need to do. So that was very cumbersome. We didn't want to have, Intuit didn't want to have accountants going out and buying Macintoshes just for the the luxury of being able to install a Mac version of QuickBooks. So they came up with this process called round tripping the data, right? And that's okay. I've got my client with QuickBooks for Mac, and I have QuickBooks for Windows. I can make or export the data from Mac to Windows, open it in QuickBooks for Windows, do my changes, do my work, and send that back to my client in their Mac version. Right. So
but
sounds great in theory.
If the client does work in between, it's probably lost, right?
Right. So when we talked about the accountant copy process, a couple times ago, we illustrated that there are some caveats to that, right? Like there are things that you can do in the accountant edition or accountant's copy that your client can't do. But that's the only process where you could actually be in two separate places and work independently but concurrently, right? So your changes in the accountant copy will be able to be exported into QuickBooks, into your client's QuickBooks. That's not the case with round tripping the data. This is truly a backup and restore process, right? So even though they're sending it to Windows, you want to be clear with your client, any changes that they're going to make into their company file are going to need to be re-entered back into their company when you send that back. So what a lot of people will do, instead of round tripping, send it to me, I'll make changes, send it back to you, is I'll send it one way. Right? It's just one-way trip. Like Southwest Airlines, or buy the one-way as opposed to the round trip fare. So there's the other caveat to all of this is, unlike the accountant edition or accountant copy, it has to be the exact same version, right? So if your client has
20, you
18,
have to be
you got to have 18, right?
Eggs.
In order to make your changes and send it back. So and the client also can't make any updates. So like if they update their QuickBooks, it won't come back unless it's in the exact same condition as which it left. So if they install the maintenance update in their QuickBooks. So those are some of the precautions, to take place in this process. So we're going to try to demonstrate a whole round trip, because I'm using a Windows-based PC here, laptop, and Carrie has her Mac. So we're going to go ahead and try to demonstrate this whole process. So when you're in the Windows version, you'll see this option here under the File and Utilities. We talked a little bit about when we did the workshop on utilities, is that you'll have this option that says Copy Company File for QuickBooks for Mac. This is what you want to use when you're sending your Windows-based file back to your Mac client, right? It puts it in a condition that the client will be able just to open. QuickBooks for Mac, it looks more like a native Mac product. People who use Macs are very familiar with that. You know, it has floating windows, you know, and it doesn't look and behave much like a Windows product. It behaves like a Mac product, and that's the main reason that people like QuickBooks for Mac who have Macs, is that it looks like a Mac product. So you're in the sample company, so you would just go to File, and your option in the Mac is Export.
Looky here, there's a save file for accountant. What's that, Dan?
All that does is do what we're about to do.
Okay, back up. All right, so we'll go back up.
Export.
Oh,
right. So export to QuickBooks for Windows.
Okay.
So when you choose that option, then what it does is it actually makes a QBB file.
Do we care about verifying?
Well, it's a sample company. Normally you would, because you would want to make sure that your data is a clean data, because that's gonna, if anything's wrong with the file, it's gonna bubble up to the surface when somebody tries to restore it, especially from going from Mac to Windows. But you see this says sample product.qbb, and that's a Windows QuickBooks backup file. So that's what it's doing, is creating this file that is in QuickBooks for Windows format, right? Then it asks for that little window down in the lower right to apply a password to protect your company file. I'm going to tell you to
don't leave it blank. Okay, but normally
they would put a password in there. Now keep in mind that is different than the admin password in order to get into the admin, right? That is just the file password to get into, to be able to extract the data. All right, show it in the Finder. Perfect.
Oh, thank goodness I did that.
Perfect. And for those of you who don't use Macs, Finder is like Windows Explorer, right? So that's how you browse the computer. So I sent you a link there for the Lisio, so right, we can send this back and forth.
Right, and when they when they did they made me bounce out. So here we are. All right, so now in Lisio, I can upload that file.
Yep. So you can just drag it from.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Okay, cancel. So I can just do this, drag and drop
from your Finder.
Even easier.
So whatever way that you're getting this file, or where they're sending this file to you, it's a backup file. So it's does it have the size there on the on your screen?
33 KBs, 33,000 KBs.
Yeah, so it's 33 megabytes. So probably too large for email. It's always a good idea to have some kind of large file transfer option, whether that just be something as simple as Google Drive, but we like to use Lisio. If you want to check them out, they
have to check something for that. Sorry,
Wednesday. All right, so that sent me the files, and then all I would do in QuickBooks once this is finished downloading is restore it. Just like a regular QuickBooks for Windows file. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm stalling for time. So here, open a restore company. Choose restore a backup copy. Local backup, and then I've got to find it. Oops.
It's always the funnest part.
Way bigger. Here's somebody. E drive. There it is.
Is that D drive for Dan?
That's right. For don't put anything else on the C drive. C.
Oh, data.
Just got the www sample product company. and we go through the process of restoring it. Because we didn't put a password or anything on it, that makes this a little easier to go. But one thing to point out or note about this process when you're coming from Mac to Windows, because there was such a gap, not only was there a 6-year gap between version 4.0 and I think 9.0, there was a point, I think in 2013, or 2016, when they stopped developing Mac again, because we figured that QuickBooks Online would take the place of anything that QuickBooks for Mac would be able to do. I mean, that's the way to catch kind of everybody up on Mac. But again, people still wanted that desktop product on the Macintosh. So there was that outcry, for a Mac-based product. So
feedback works.
Yeah, between like 2016 and 2019, there wasn't a Mac product developed. So again, there was this big, there's 2 points of where there's this big gap between, Mac versions. But again, people just still like that. As you like to say, Carrie, desktop's not dead.
It's not dead. And we have hosting for those that want it anywhere. Now that doesn't work for Mac. You can just put it on your Mac, but
yeah,
it's a whole nother,
right,
whole nother world.
But when you have, in your clients' work, if they have some Mac folks, people who use Macs and some people use PCs, then hosting is a great option for those who like the desktop, because then it doesn't matter how they're accessing their QuickBooks. It's just they're getting to a place that has their QuickBooks installed.
This thing is updating. So before you start this, should everybody go into their QuickBooks and get the latest patches, like the Mac patch and then the PC patch?
It wouldn't hurt to be on the latest release of the version that you're using. But as long as you're you're on 2020, and I'm on 2020, then it should round trip just fine. But you don't want to be like, while I have the file, you wouldn't want to install a patch, because it's got to come back in the exact same patch version that it left.
So I can go to the beach, right, while you're fixing my file?
Exactly. Yeah. Go
I like
sip
that.
your margaritas.
Yeah, I want to sit by the pool and have margaritas.
Now, this process coming from Mac to Windows, it actually, because of all of the changes, it has to baseline the version, and it baselines it in 2005. So that's why it's saying we're updating your company file. It's not bringing it to a newer version of QuickBooks. It looks like it is, but it's because it's actually, when it restores it as a 2005 QuickBooks for Windows file, and then it has to bring that up to 2020.
Fun.
Yeah, we're in the Windows version now. I was in the sample company before, but I'm going to make a change here, and then I'll send it back to you. So,
okay,
what are we going to do? We're going to make a customer. I'll just create a customer, and I'll send it back to you. So add a new customer, and we'll do
ABC. Yeah.
AAA Carrie. All right. And then to reverse the process, it's going to the File menu. This is in the Windows version. It's Utilities, right? So Mac version is Export. So it's not consistent.
Never is. That's what keeps our brains working, Dan.
Right. So there is no export menu, just like you were looking in there, and there is no utilities menu in there.
That's what I was looking for.
Maybe there is a utilities menu, but there's nothing about exporting to Windows. But this says copy. This says copy company file for Quick. Whoops, I did.
Well, you did the wrong one.
I did the wrong one. Hold on.
You got a little too excited.
Excited there. Yeah, and you never want to use this anymore, because they don't even use this option.
Yeah.
Copy company for QuickBooks for Mac. There we go. So some things to notice. Inventory, it's different. Custom forms, if you had custom forms, you'll have to recreate them in Mac. So it just gives you a little heads up if you did, if you created some customizations, just to send them back. Just keep that in mind. Right? So do you want to continue? All right. It's going to close all the windows. And then it asks me, where do I want to save it? And I'm going to put it back on my D drive.
You'll call it something different, so I
You
don't.
see the file actually
yeah,
says
we want to keep it the same.
www.samplecompany.qbb.
Aha.
So it's giving that extra appendage so that we know which file's which. Okay, so we successfully exported your company file. It's located, so on and so forth. So, and file uploaded successfully. Okay, I see it now on my machine. So now
Bam.
good too.
Okay, so we will then download it.
Yep.
I assume I'm doing that right. And it landed somewhere. I have no idea where. Showing the Finder.
The Finder.
In the downloads. All right.
So downloads. So now we'll do the restore. So now you would just treat this like any other.
That's crazy. Okay, so let's try again. So we'll go into File.
Well, what did you do? Click on it? Double click on it? Or?
I think so. So
okay, so it may have actually just restored it for you. This is one of those things that is a little bit nicer in.
I can't.
So you
mean I could just double click this?
Yeah, well, I think you have to close out of the file that you're in. Go to
out of this like that, and
QuickBooks is still running.
My QuickBooks is somewhere in the background.
Yeah.
So double click on the download.
Well, you got to get out of the company file that you're in. So just go ahead and close QuickBooks. So quit it.
Oh. Quit QuickBooks. Okay, good. So weird being in a. See, it's backing up the company file. So that's what it just does automatically?
Yeah, it just does that automatically inside it.
Oh, how nice. All right, so then we reopen QuickBooks.
Yeah, just try double clicking on it from here, the QBB file.
Okay.
From your Finder.
Okay.
Let's do down. Okay.
I'm just allowing it.
Mm.
Okay.
All right, now it's asking you to restore the file.
And there's no password?
There's no password.
It's asking for one.
It's not letting you go.
It needs the admin password.
Which we didn't create.
Okay, so let's go old school.
The file.
Oh, sorry. File. Oops, open.
There's not a restore, or do we?
No.
I can't see it.
There's no restore option. New company?
Just hit open. Open company and then browse to the QBB file.
Okay.
You are restoring a backup file, right? So it's the same process.
Still wants
still asking. What is this? What does that say? I can't read it.
If you're switching from QuickBooks to Windows, use the file's primary admin password.
Oh, which it doesn't have one.
Right? If you save this file from QuickBooks for Mac, use the password you set from the save file.
Which was 0. I mean, we can't. So maybe we should have put a password.
Apparently we should have done one.
Yeah.
So this tripping stuff's fun, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is what happens sometimes is that, you get caught up in the password issues between the two, but that's, we never, you saw it, we never put in the password, but it's asking for a password that doesn't exist. And Susan is saying, but QBB isn't Mac, right? But it does create it in such a way that it knows that it's a Mac file. So you saw that you can double click on it, or you can also use the open company and restore it that way.
Right.
So had we put in a password on it, we would have seen it
Yeah.
And then you would have seen the AAA Carrie customer. But that is, in a nutshell, how you round trip the data. And this is a great example of why people don't even use it, because there are so many challenges along the way. Whether it's a password and versions and things like that. So as long as it is, what a lot of people will do is they'll use it just to view their data, right? Like, send me the file
so I can see it in Windows. Yeah.
Right. And then as long as it's a later, that version or later, it will bring it up to the latest version that you happen to be using. Just bear in mind that you can't send it back if it's not in the same version.
The moral of the story is just get a Zoom session.
Right.
Team
There are
viewer
other
or
ways
something.
Right.
Work in the live file.
Yeah, this accessing their computer is probably a better alternative than trying to get the file. But if you need to do some research, have them send you the file. You can bring it up to your version in Windows, and then if you make a game plan, then you can find a time to visit or remote access their machine through Zoom or something along those lines to guide them through that process. But that was a fumbling version of round tripping the data in QuickBooks for Mac versus Windows.
That's right. What a fun time.
You can stop sharing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's, because I don't even know what's stuck on my screen.
Good thing you weren't sending messages or anything.
No, that could have happened. I did check the chat.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week on another Workshop Wednesday where hopefully we'll have our act together as far as what it is that
we'll do a dry run.
We'll continue on with the different ways to do data conversions. So we talked before about QuickBooks going from desktop to online, and now online to desktop, and now QuickBooks Mac versus QuickBooks for Windows. I think next week we'll be talking about going from QBO to QBO. So if we wanted to start a new QBO file, what do you do to get that data into it? So hopefully you join us next week for another fun-filled Workshop Wednesday. And you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week. Have a good one.